Welcome back to episode 11 of the Employee to Boss podcast. My name is Haley Hayhurst. As a business owner, especially when you're starting off and starting to work with people, you really want to show off the results that you're getting to your potential clients. This is because some people are not ready to invest. Some people are scared to put their trust and outsource into you. So you want to make it as simple for them as possible by showing these testimonials. But if you're not sure how to use your testimonials or really not sure how to get testimonials, this episode is 100% for you. I'm speaking with Katie Corbett, a customer case study writer. What Katie does is she interviews business owners about their service, and then she also interviews one of their clients about their testimonials. And together, they put together a customer case study. This shows the emotional results, the physical results, the numbers, everything that you transform in your clients' lives, put into a case study. So you can use this in your branding. You can send this out to potential clients. And it's just another level of trust that people can have in you before they invest. Katie wrote her first case study back in 2014 and just absolutely fell in love. She works with business owners and marketing professionals so they can share their success stories with their happy customers. So we talk about who should have a case study, what phase of your business you are ready for a case study, and then also if you're a writer and looking to get into a certain niche, we talk about the different types of writing styles, how Katie came to learn her voice, and just a whole bunch of other things. Katie is totally blind, but that did not stop her from starting her own business and giving her clients amazing results. When she talks about herself and her business, she does not even make this part of her marketing because what she does, she's amazing at it. So she gives us some tips on the ways that she built a team to support her. This is an amazing episode, and really, if you're looking to get those testimonials or looking to show off your client wins, this might be the next step for you. So let's dive right in with Katie Corbett. Today, I have Katie Corbett on the podcast, and I am so excited to be talking to her because not only is she just an incredible businesswoman, she has such an amazing story and a really unique niche that we're going to get into today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Thank you so much for being on. So I would love it if you could start off by telling us who you are, a little bit about yourself, and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Katie. I live in Wisconsin, USA, near the Wisconsin Dells, which some people call it the water park capital of the world. I am a writer, and I specialize in customer case studies. And I know we'll go into a little bit more about what those are in a minute, but for just a brief overview, they are basically the success stories of how a client or customer has gotten results through a product or service, and businesses use them for marketing. And I've been a writer professionally for 12 or 13 years now. I count my college newspaper as professional experience.
As you should.
Yeah, and I've been on my own. My business has been officially incorporated for almost a year and a half, but I've been doing case studies and focusing on them as a form of writing for a little over 2 years.
Very awesome. I'm really excited to get into case studies because in one of my previous episodes, I think it was episode 3 or 4, we talked a lot about how case studies helped her business and how she always wants her clients to do case studies because she's in marketing. And so I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, we know that our services help people. We know that what we're doing is actually beneficial for our clients, but sometimes for new people to be attracted to us, it can be kind of hard to explain to them like everything that you help clients with. You know, I help clients with podcasting, but I really help them grow their businesses as well. And so explaining to some people all of that can be very, there's so many ways that it can go. And so that's really where case studies come into play. So how did you get into case studies, and really what was your first experience writing a case study?
Back in 2014, I believe it was, I had a freelance writing client approach me and she said to me, hey, I have this really great product. And I have a teacher who used it in her classroom with her students. Would you interview her and write an article about her experience using this product? And I did, and it was a lot of fun. I love interviewing people. I love asking questions. As a 12-year-old, I was the person who sat down with a lot of my family members with like a tape recorder and a list of questions and just like asked them about themselves.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I love questions and I love getting to know people. So I wrote this article and she really liked it and I really enjoyed the experience. And I just kind of thought, well, that was a really fun, one-off project. Well, a few years passed and I was at the point where I was starting to consider running my own business and working for myself. And I came to discover over the years that all writing is not created equal, but also that I could still be a writer and write in a form that I liked. So I started exploring and trying to figure out what form that might be. And I got a book called 88 Money Making Writing Jobs. It's by Robert Bly. And I marked down anything and everything that looked of interest to me. And case studies was one of those things. And as I got to explore more about case studies, I listened to a few podcasts about them. I took a class. I bought a case studies book from a well-known case study expert. And then I actually wrote one featuring a LinkedIn coach and how her services impacted someone who was looking for a job. I just really realized the impact of case studies, how much fun they are to write, how much fun they are to read, and how much of a difference they can make in gearing a business up to attract the right clients for them.
Totally. Yeah. I think that that's a really important thing to think about, where I started off as a writer as well. I went to school for journalism, and there's so many different styles of writing. And when you're starting to get into business, it's kind of easy to forget about what you actually enjoy doing and do what actually will make you money. And so, for any writers out there, what advice do you have for them when they're starting to look for clients, or, want to take on clients, but maybe the style that they write in isn't what they're attracting?
Yeah, I would say there will be a period of time in your business where you are going to have to take whatever work you can get to pay the bills. But I recommend minimizing that period as much as possible. For me, it was about a year where I was willing to take anything that came my way to within reason. And now I'm at a point where if it's not a case study, I'm not interested in writing it to the most extent. So I would figure out also, even within that period where you're taking work to pay the bills, have some criteria too. Like, I knew that I wasn't going to do a white paper because I'm not trained in white papers, and it didn't sound like something I would enjoy, even though I looked into it and I considered it as part of my options. I knew that I didn't want to do social media because there are others who, it's a full-time job to keep up with social media and how it changes and the algorithms and how it all works and how it all fits together. I knew that wasn't going to be me. But a bio for someone's website, sure, I would write that. I helped a coach create some branding profiles. She was offering a quiz that business owners could take to find out the personality of their brand. And so I helped her create those profiles that they would get in the end. And I did some web copy for a business that I really believed in. And those were the things, those were my, okay, I can do this projects. But I wanted to minimize that time so that I could spend the majority of my time working on case studies because I love them and am really passionate about them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you especially said you want to minimize the amount of time you're working on what you don't want to work on, because that will really lead to burnout if you're not feeling passionate about what you're doing, or if you're just doing it to make money but not really enjoying it. That's what leads to burnout. And so thank you so much for addressing that, because it's what a lot of us need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that it was some advice that I got from my case studies writing coach. She said, you can do one, maybe two free case studies just to get an example, just to get something in your portfolio, but no more than that. And setting the expectation for myself that I was going to get paid, and that I was going to get paid what the industry commands. And even, talking with other writers and figuring out where their rates are. I have a case study writer friend. We talk every month or so, and we compare, we talk to each other like, oh, I raised my rates this year. And, she's in a completely different niche than me. I tend to write more for coaches or tech companies, or I have written for a web designer, and she writes in the manufacturing industry for like engineering firms and construction companies. So find another writer that you're not in direct competition with. And honestly, there's so much business out there that even if you are in direct competition, there's enough work for everyone, for sure. But if you can find a writer that you're not in direct competition with, it will make you feel a little better about sharing what you're up to, and just talk shop and get that person's perspective every once in a while.
I love that. That's such a great tip. Finding, like, I always call it a biz bestie, someone that you can just share business with, because at least like in my life, I don't have a lot of entrepreneurial friends. And so finding people in the same industry as me, or, around my same age, or just women in business, those are who I can get ideas from and share ideas with and kind of collaborate. So that's awesome. I would love to talk more about case studies and really the details of like who needs them, when someone needs them, and what they can do for business. So if you want to share maybe, some things that your clients have told you, or results that you've seen from your clients investing in a case study, I think that would be, people want to be sure when they're investing in someone. And so tell us what a case study can do.
Absolutely. So I'll define it a little bit more in a little bit more detail. So as I said earlier, a case study is a success story. So the first and most important element of your case study is your happy customer that you're planning to feature. And when you pick that customer, pick someone who really you enjoy working with them, they enjoy working with you, they love their experience, they rave about you to other people, they introduce you to other people maybe. If they've sent referrals your way, that's another really good indication that they might be a great customer to feature. And I'm actually in the very beginning process of creating my own case study about how case studies impact business. And the way that I selected my happy customer that I'm going to feature is I have a client who has gotten 4 case studies from me. So clearly she believes in case studies. She believes in what I do. Well, we were just having coffee last month, and she said to me, oh my gosh, Katie, you'll never believe this. I had a company reach out to me, and they were interested in working with me, and they wanted to know if I had any case studies, and I had some, and I sent them to them, and then they chose me. They wanted to work with me. And so I kind of put a mental bookmark in my head and said, oh, this might be a good time to get a story on that. And I contacted her last week and said, hey, how's that project going? And, she's like, oh, it's great. We're almost done. And, it's really going well. And I asked her if she'd be willing to be featured. And she said yes. So finding a happy customer who really believes in you, believes in what you do, and shares their successes with you is a really great indication that they might be interested in being featured. Because with that customer, you'll take them through, your case study will take them through the 4 elements. So there's the introduction, where you introduce the happy customer, tell who they are, what they do, how they serve their customers. Then you'll go into the challenge that they were facing. So case studies come out of, this is a challenge we were facing. We didn't know how to solve it on our own. So we turned to this person, this vendor, this product, this solution. And Once you have the challenge down, then you go into more about the solution that they chose. So, why did they pick the product or service or vendor specifically? And you'll talk more about who the product, service, vendor is in this section too. And then, of course, you'll get to the results part of the case study, where you'll talk about those results that people see when they work with that product, person, or service, or vendor. And the results kind of come in two forms. There can be qualitative results, which are more stories and emotions. Like I have a case study I wrote for a confidence coach, and her client told me that, I was so much more confident. I was able to speak up in meetings. I was just a lot more comfortable with myself, and that was a really great feeling. That's a qualitative result. And then there are quantitative results, and those are the hard data, the numbers, the dollar amounts, the items sold, the number of people coached, or the speed at which someone went through a program. So, for example, for my very first case study about the LinkedIn coach, her happy customer took her course. It was a one-day workshop to learn how to look for jobs on LinkedIn. She implemented her suggestions, which only took about a week, and she landed her dream job in, it was between three and 6 months without filling out any job applications.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then a couple years later, she kept up with her LinkedIn. She kept things rolling, kept in touch with her network. Well, she got laid off. And she implemented those same strategies and had another dream job in a matter of months. Wow. Without filling out a single job application. That's an example of a quantitative result. And ideally, your happy customer is probably going to have some qualitative results and some quantitative results, but it's also okay if a case study leans more towards qualitative rather than quantitative. The case study that I'm working on right now for my own business, this first one is probably going to lean a little bit more qualitative because it's going to be a little bit more emotions based. But we're planning to do a case study later this year where my client will share out her case studies and get some data on her website traffic and social media reactions and new business coming in and stuff like that. And hopefully we'll get a case study that features more quantitative data.
That's awesome. I love that because, there's so many, like, it's one thing to tell your clients and post it on social media, and it's a whole nother thing to have a whole case study to back up what you're saying.
Absolutely. And when your happy customer is saying that you are awesome, it just lends your business that much more credibility. Because, how many of us, when we want to see a movie or try a new restaurant, or, even, if you go shopping with a friend and you try on an outfit, you ask them, hey, what's your opinion? What do you think? We are social people and as humans, and we want to know what other people think before we go and have an experience for ourselves. And so case studies give people that without, they can just sit it and read it in their own time. They can reflect on it in their own time. They can get the opinion of someone who has used that product or service without having to go and find that person, because it's all wrapped up for them in a case study.
That right there is a testimonial in itself. So I would love to hear about, like, what, after you write this case study, what are some things that your clients can do with them?
Yeah, so there are many, many, many ways that you can use a case study. One of my clients is using his case studies in venture capital pitches because he's looking for funding for his company. A lot of people will post quotes from their case studies or statistics from their case studies on social media. People will put them on their website. People will shorten them a little bit and put it in their e-newsletter or even in their mailer newsletter if they have one. People will put statistics from a case study on a sales slide. So if your company is one where you're going and giving presentations to people, you can put this stuff on your sales slide and use it as social proof that way. And a lot of people talk about their case studies when they are talking with potential clients. I can talk about the results that my clients have gotten, and that those are things that they can share, and not so much as like I'm going to promise you this because this other client had this experience too, but it's more like this is what is possible. Like one of my clients designed a website for a knitting company, a knitting store, and COVID shut down her storefront. And instead of having to sit there and pay $800 a month for her storefront rental, to keep up with her rental, they added an online store component to her website, and she sold over $10,000 in yarn and other knitting supplies during the pandemic.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
that's awesome.
That is a result that I hope my client is telling her potential customers, because that's a really cool story. So it really just, the sky is really the limit. And, it's good to have a case study as part of your marketing plan, just because it's one piece of content that you can share over and over again in many, many, many ways.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So I know some people who are listening to this right now are probably thinking, this sounds great. I want to do it, but is this right for me? And so I know you said that you typically work with coaches and entrepreneurs and businesses, but at what stage is it smart to start thinking about a case study or, investing in a case study?
Yeah, I can speak extra clearly to this now because I'm at that point where I want a case study for my own business. So I would say, if you gather testimonials from your current clients and your past clients, and hopefully you've been doing that. If you haven't been doing that yet, that's your first step, is to gather those testimonials. And then once you have a number of testimonials, look for a standout client. A client who's had really great results, a client you've kept in touch with, a client who refers you to other people, a lot of those things that I said towards the beginning. And, let your client, in some ways, let their story kind of dictate when you're ready. Because if your client has an amazing story, you don't want to miss out on that, capturing that amazing story. Earlier this week, I was thinking about various excuses not to have a case study for my business. And then I realized, wait a second, like if I don't capture this story now, who knows how many years it will take for me to find another client like this, or for, her to be in the position where she has time to share her story. Who knows what could change. And so I decided to go for it. And I'm actually not writing my own case study. I'm hiring one of my writer friends to write it for me, because I want the integrity of having that outside perspective. Particularly with interviewing, it can be helpful to have someone from the outside doing the interviews. And it's not that your clients wouldn't be honest with you, it's just they might be a little more comfortable talking about their challenges, and maybe if they have some feedback about something that could be improved for the future, they might want to tell your writer, and then your writer can pass that along to you. So you don't have to do everything all on your own at all. So I would say whenever you have a great story, that's the time.
Yeah, definitely take advantage of it when you have those stories. That way you can have more. I like where you said that you yourself are outsourcing your case study because you want the integrity. And a lot of solopreneurs, me included, want to do everything ourselves, but sometimes we just have to realize, just outsource the things that, take you too long or you don't know the most about, because time is money. And so, like I love writing, but I love writing human interest stories and interviewing and things like that. And so a case study wouldn't be in my skill set, but someone like you would be perfect to outsource to, because you are the expert in that.
Yeah, it's definitely a great way to lend a fresh perspective even to your own business, because we haven't done the interview where she interviews me yet, but I know that once we do that interview, she's going to pull things out of it that I never would have thought of.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Because we're all so biased to our own successes and business and all of that. Very cool. You have your own business, but I would love it if you could share a little bit about, navigating building, starting and running a business as a person with a disability. I know, when you talk about yourself and your business, it's not something that you put in the front of your marketing or yourself or anything like that because, you are an expert at what you do. But for anyone who's listening who maybe has a disability or something like that, I would love it if you could share a little bit of advice of how you started.
Absolutely. So I am totally blind, and I feel that my disability impacted my business in a few different ways. Number one, as we were talking about just a little bit ago, there are things that I cannot do myself. I cannot drive a car, for example. That would be a really bad idea. There are certain websites and just certain platforms that are not always the most accessible to me. So when it came to building my business, instead of thinking of it as, oh, now I have to figure out how to do all this stuff and with this added challenge onto it, I thought of it as, okay, how can I assemble a team around me of people who can do those things that I either physically can't do or just don't want to do. So I hired an attorney to help me draft my LLC and get that all filed because I really don't like paperwork. I keep my own books, but I do have an accountant that looks things over right around tax time. I have a proofreader because I use software that reads the screen to me. And while I can catch a lot of errors, it doesn't catch everything. And as a writer, as I'm sure you know, it's always helpful to have another pair of eyes look at your writing.
Definitely.
Yeah, so she is amazing. And then I have a web designer because I'm not skilled at, I'm a writer, not a web designer. So a lot of it is, things that other people would, could do for anyone else. But then, there are specific things like graphic design. I don't do that. And luckily with case studies, the writing work and the design work are separate anyway. And that also went into my decision to do case studies as my main writing focus, because in some other writing mediums, they aren't separated. And that just, I didn't want to be, oh, I can only do this, but I can't do that part. It's like, well, no, this is just how case studies are. You write them and then you send them to a designer who designs them. And then both people can do what they're amazing at. And you get a great case study at the end if you want it designed. So that is a little bit about that. And then just in terms of building my business, I am exploring more on how to incorporate video into my business because I know it's a really important thing that a lot of people love. Right now, my marketing is very text-based. I post on LinkedIn once a week, and I reach out to people and have calls with them. And then, of course, I have the text that's on my website that talks all about my business. So I'm still figuring out if in what ways I can make the video space comfy for me. And maybe that's hiring a videographer and, taking a whole bunch of videos in one day. I don't know. I'm still exploring that. But if you have a disability and you're interested in starting a business, there's no reason you can't do it. And whenever you can, turn your disability into an asset. I found out about my very first paying client because I was a subscriber to a newsletter for blind people, and his company was featured. And so I reached out to him. I wouldn't have found out about his company if I weren't blind. So that's another really cool way that I think my blindness has enhanced my writing. And since his product is for people who are blind, he also really liked that I could really relate and he understood some of the frustrations that some of his customers experience too when they're looking for a solution and why they chose him. So it's a benefit, I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think, a lot of people when starting a business, there's always that fear of, is this going to work out? How am I going to make this work? How is this going to work? Blah, blah, blah. Like we get it so in our heads about everything. And so, I think it's just so awesome that you were able to think of, your disability in that way and be like, yes, I am a writer. Above all, I am a writer and I am going to write for people and help them grow their businesses.
Yeah, it's what I love.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything on this podcast today. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we get into some more details of how people can work with you?
I would say that as you're starting your business and as you're growing your business, pay attention to the people you surround yourself with. And that can even be as simple as pay attention to the types of podcasts you listen to, the types of books you read, the types of media you consume, because you are a compilation of the 5 people you spend the most time with, whether that's, I spend 20 hours a week listening to the Tim Ferriss show, or he's a big inspiration for me, by the way, or it's, I spend a lot of time with my mom, think about how those people impact you, because if you want to be successful and positive and if you want to put in your whole effort, you'll want to make sure that you're spending time around people who feel the same.
That's awesome. I love that. How can people work with you and where can people find you to connect with you?
Yes, the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. And I also have a website. It is getacasestudy.com, GETACASESTUDY.com. You can find me there.
Awesome. I will put both of those in the show notes. And I love to end every episode with you sharing 3 actionable tips that the audience can follow today to either be where you are or start their business or overcome some obstacle in their life. What do you challenge the audience to do today?
All right. So tip number 1, pick up a book or a movie or a story, basically, of someone who inspires you and watch or listen to or read that. Tip number 2, make a list of all the potential business ideas you have. Just sit down and daydream and make that list. And then tip number 3, pick the next thing that you would have to do in order to make your dreams come true. And if it's morning time when you're listening to this, put it on today's to-do list. And if it's evening time when you're listening to this, put it on tomorrow's to-do list and get it done.
Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all of your tips on case studies, all the details. And I really think this episode will help a lot of people realize that this might be the next step to take in their business. So thank you so much for sharing everything.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.